Jason had always dreamed of owning a spaceship, growing up in the small town of Larkville on Earth. He had only ever seen ships in the sky during the rare visits from off-world travelers. Now, at the age of 30, he still hadn't gotten the chance to leave the planet. His life had turned into a cycle of work and bills, with little room for adventure. That was until the opportunity came up. One morning, while scrolling through a space auction site, Jason saw something that caught his eye. A cheap, old starship. The listing showed a small, worn-out freighter labeled as for scrap, but the price was incredibly low. Jason rubbed his eyes in disbelief. It wasn't the type of ship he dreamed of, but it was still a ship, and for the price, he couldn't resist. It was more than he could ever afford for a full, shiny new vessel, but it was a chance to escape. His heart raced as he clicked on the Bid Now button. Within minutes, Jason had placed his bid. The countdown began, and with it, his hopes grew. The auction was quiet for a while, with no one else bidding on the ship. The clock ticked away, and Jason's excitement grew. He watched as the numbers slowly lowered, knowing that this might be his only shot. Finally, the countdown hit 0. He had won. The ship was his. Jason couldn't help but laugh to himself. He had just bought a spaceship. It wasn't much, but it was something. Something that could take him far from Earth. Maybe it wasn't a luxury cruiser, but Jason had always been good with machines. A bit of elbow grease and the right tools could fix just about anything. He quickly started making plans to get the ship to his local space dock. The auction site provided the ship's coordinates, and he arranged for a cargo shuttle to bring it to him. As he waited for the ship's delivery, Jason couldn't stop thinking about his future adventures. Maybe he'd explore distant planets, or maybe he'd just cruise through the stars to escape his dull life. Whatever the future held, he was ready for it. The next day, the cargo shuttle arrived at the docking station, and the moment Jason set his eyes on the ship, he felt a thrill run through him. It was smaller than he expected, but it had a certain charm. The ship had seen better days, that was clear. It was scratched and dented, with rust creeping along its edges. But it had character, and for the first time in years, Jason felt a spark of hope. He boarded the ship, climbing through the hatch and into the cockpit. The interior was dusty, and the controls were ancient, but the ship's systems were still functional, or so it seemed. Jason smiled as he sat down at the pilot's seat. It would take time to get everything up to speed, but he was determined to make it work. He spent the next few hours cleaning the cockpit and checking the systems. The ship was far from perfect, but it was his, and he was ready to make it his own. As the sun set over the docking bay, Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. He was about to leave Earth. He was about to fly among the stars. There was just one problem. The ship didn't seem to be in as good a shape as he had hoped. Some of the systems weren't responding correctly, and a few areas of the ship appeared to be malfunctioning. But Jason wasn't worried. He was a good mechanic, and he had a few tricks up his sleeve. He could fix this. That night, as Jason started working on the engine, he discovered something strange. There was a small hidden compartment in the ship's storage hold, which wasn't listed in the ship's specs. Curious, Jason decided to investigate further. He pried open the compartment's hidden panel with his tools, expecting to find spare parts or old cargo. But what he found shocked him. Inside the compartment was a small stasis pod, and it was active. The pod's light blinked, and a soft humming sound came from it. Jason froze. This wasn't just a cargo hold, it had been used for something else. Something important. He stepped closer, heart pounding in his chest. The pod opened with a soft hiss, revealing a beautiful, otherworldly figure. A woman. Jason's breath caught in his throat. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her features were sharp yet graceful. Her eyes were closed, as if she were asleep, but Jason couldn't help but feel an odd connection to her, even in this strange moment. The woman appeared to be in a deep, peaceful sleep. Jason didn't know what to think. Who was she? Why was she hidden in his ship? He had no answers. The only thing he knew was that his life was about to change forever. He could have called for help, but instead, Jason decided to keep her hidden for now. There was so much more he needed to figure out. But one thing was certain: his new ship was hiding more than just malfunctioning engines. It was hiding a mystery, and Jason was about to uncover it. Jason stood frozen in front of the stasis pod, staring at the beautiful alien woman inside. Her skin was pale blue, and her long, silvery hair floated lightly in the pod's cool air. Her delicate features and graceful form made her look almost unreal, like a figure from a dream. He couldn't understand how she had ended up in the ship he had just bought. Why was she hidden in the compartment, and who had put her there? He took a cautious step closer to the pod. As he did, the light inside the pod flickered, and the humming sound grew louder. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Was she alive? Was she dangerous? He didn't know, but the way she looked so peaceful and still told him she wasn't a threat. Still, something didn't feel right. He could sense there was more to this than just a woman in a sleep pod. Jason glanced around the ship's small storage hold, still unsure of what to do. The rest of the ship seemed so ordinary, old, worn, and in desperate need of repair. But this stasis pod, it didn't belong. It felt like a secret hidden deep inside the ship, a secret he had just uncovered. Jason knew he couldn't leave her like this. He had to find out who she was and why she was here. He gently pressed a button on the pod's side, and the lid began to lift slowly, revealing more of the woman's face. As the lid opened, a soft glow emitted from the pod, casting light across the hold. Her eyes fluttered open, and Jason took a quick step back, startled by the sudden movement. The woman blinked, confused and disoriented. She looked around, as if trying to understand where she was. Her eyes locked onto Jason, and she seemed to take a deep breath, as though waking from a long sleep. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, in a voice that sounded both soft and powerful, she spoke. "Where am I?" Jason hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure of how to explain the situation. "You're on my ship," he said carefully. I bought it from an auction." The alien woman blinked again, clearly trying to process his words. "Your ship?" she asked, her voice still filled with confusion. I was supposed to be delivered." "Delivered?" Jason repeated. "Delivered to whom?" She sat up slowly, her long hair flowing around her shoulders. Jason couldn't help but notice how graceful she was, even in the disorienting situation. "To the ruler of the Zealander system," she replied, her voice growing more steady. "I was to be given as a gift." Jason's mind raced. He had heard of the Zealander system before, a powerful and wealthy race known for their advanced technology. But a gift? That was something Jason couldn't wrap his mind around. Why would anyone put her on a ship to be delivered as some kind of gift? The alien woman seemed to read the confusion on Jason's face. I was chosen to be bonded to him," she said, her tone growing quieter. "It was not my choice, but it was my duty." Jason took a step forward, trying to process everything she had just said. "Bonded?" he asked, trying to understand. "What do you mean by that?" The woman lowered her gaze, her eyes filled with sadness. "In my culture," she began, her voice soft but strong, "a woman is bonded to a ruler. She becomes his bride and plays a part in his empire. I was taken from my home, sent to him, and made to serve him. It was expected." Jason felt a wave of sympathy wash over him. He couldn't imagine what she had been through, being forced into a life she didn't choose. He looked at her, unsure of what to say. "So, you're a prisoner?" he asked quietly. The woman nodded, her eyes distant. "Yes, but now, I am free?" She seemed uncertain, almost as if she couldn't believe it herself. Jason felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to help her, to get her away from this situation. But another part was still confused. This was a lot to take, and she wasn't just some random person. She was part of a greater, unknown story. "Do you want to stay here?" Jason asked, his voice gentle. "I mean, you're safe for now. You don't have to go back to him." She looked at him, her expression softening. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what to do now. Everything I've known is gone." Jason felt a pang of empathy for her. He didn't know what her life had been like, but understood what it felt like to be stuck, to be trapped by circumstances. "I'll help you," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "I don't know how, but I'll help you." The woman gave him a small, uncertain smile, as though she didn't quite believe his words, but was grateful nonetheless. Jason turned to leave the hold, feeling a new sense of purpose. He had bought this ship for a reason, he thought, and now, this alien woman had become a part of his journey. What came next? He wasn't sure. But he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to be an ordinary adventure. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a strange turn. The woman, Lyra, as she had introduced herself, was still sitting in the small hold of the ship. Looking lost, he hadn't expected any of this when he had bought the old freighter. But there she was, an alien with a mysterious past, and somehow she was now a part of his life for the next few days. Jason did what he could to make her feel comfortable. The ship, though old and worn, had a few functional areas. He showed Lyra the basics of how the ship worked, though it was clear she wasn't used to Earth technology. He also made sure she had food and water. Lyra, in return, was kind. But there was something distant about her, as if her mind was somewhere else caught between the past she couldn't escape. In the uncertain future she now faced, Jason tried to engage her in conversation. But it was difficult. Lyra spoke a language Jason didn't understand. But she had learned a bit of basic English from her captors, so they could communicate in broken sentences. Yet, every time Jason asked her more about her home or her past, Lyra would become quiet, her eyes distant, as if the memories were too painful to talk about. One evening, Jason sat across from Lyra in the ship's makeshift dining area. He had just finished a quick repair on the engine and decided to take a break. He looked over at her, wondering what she was thinking. "Lyra," he said gently, "I know you've been through a lot, but you don't have to stay silent. You can talk to me. I want to help." Lyra hesitated for a moment before her eyes met his. "I don't know how to trust anymore," she whispered, her voice full of sadness. "I've been taken, traded, and given away. I was supposed to serve a ruler I didn't know. But now, I don't know what to do." Jason felt his heart ache for her. He couldn't imagine being in her shoes, forced into a life she hadn't chosen, with no way out. He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words to say. "You're free now," he said softly. "I'm not going to force you to do anything. I just want you to know that you don't have to go back to him, whoever he is. You can stay here. We can figure this out together." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. She seemed to be weighing his words carefully. Finally, she nodded. But Jason could see the confusion in her eyes. She didn't seem to fully believe that she was free. She had been told what her life was supposed to be, and now, here she was, without a plan, without a place to go. "Why did you buy this ship?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "What do you want from me?" Jason blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected that question. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about it himself, but hearing it out loud made him realize just how uncertain everything was. "I didn't expect any of this," Jason admitted with a small, rueful smile. "Honestly, I just wanted to get away from Earth. I never thought I'd end up with you." He paused, not sure how to explain himself. "But now, I guess it's not just about me anymore. I don't know what's going to happen, but I want to help you. I don't have much, but I can give you that." Lyra looked at him, a small flicker of something like hope in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She had spent so long being told what to do, and now she was hearing something different. For the first time since Jason had found her, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future outside of the life she had been forced into. The days passed slowly, and as they did, Jason found himself getting closer to Lyra. They worked together to fix the ship, though most of the repairs were basic for now. Lyra seemed to know a lot about technology from her world, even if it was different from Earth's. She had her own way of solving problems, which intrigued Jason. One afternoon, as they were working on the communications system, Jason asked, "How long have you been in that stasis pod?" Lyra looked up, her eyes clouded with memories. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Time is strange for me. I don't know how long I was in stasis. It felt like nothing, and everything all at once." Jason nodded, understanding that time had probably lost its meaning for her. "Do you want to go back to your home?" he asked, testing the waters. Lyra was silent for a moment. "I don't know if I can," she said. "My people, they might not even accept me anymore. I was taken. I was meant to serve. I don't think they will want someone like me anymore." Jason felt a pang of sadness for her. She was torn between a past that had shaped her and a future she wasn't sure she could have. He wanted to help her, but the path forward wasn't clear. "I think," Jason said after a moment, "that you don't have to go back to anyone. You don't need anyone to tell you what your life should be. You can make your own choices now." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled. It was small, but it was there. Jason felt a warmth spread through him, knowing that, in some way, he had made a difference. As the days turned into weeks, their connection deepened. Jason had never planned for any of this, but he knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just about him. The ship had brought them together, and whatever the future held, they would face it together. The days on the ship grew quieter, and Jason had begun to feel more at ease with Lyra. Their work together had brought them closer, and though there were still moments of silence, the ship no longer felt like a lonely place. It had started to feel like a home shared between two people who had been thrown together by fate. But Jason had no idea how true that was, or how quickly things could change. One day, while Jason was fixing the ship's navigation system, Lyra approached him, her face serious. "Jason," she said, her voice tense, "we need to leave now." Jason looked up from his work, surprised by her sudden urgency. "What's going on? What's wrong?" Lyra's eyes darted to the control panel, and Jason followed her gaze. The ship's radar showed several unknown ships approaching, moving fast. They were heading straight for them. "We're being followed," Lyra said, her voice low. "They found us." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "Who are they? What do they want with us?" Lyra's face grew pale. "It's them, the ones who sent me away. They want me back." Jason's mind raced. He knew nothing about the people she had been taken from, but he could see the fear in her eyes. These were not just any people, these were the ones who had forced her into a life she hadn't chosen. And now, they were coming for her. Jason immediately moved to the cockpit. He had no idea how fast the pursuers were, but the thought of running had never felt more real. He powered up the ship's engines, and the lights flickered as they roared to life. The old freighter wasn't built for speed, but Jason had learned how to push it to its limits. He gripped the controls and looked to Lyra. "Are you sure you can't communicate with them? Maybe we can talk this out," he asked, trying to stay calm. Lyra shook her head, her eyes full of regret. "They don't want to talk. They want me back alive or dead. They'll stop at nothing to take me." Jason's hands tightened on the controls. He wasn't going to let anyone take her, not after everything they'd been through. The ship's engines roared louder as he pushed them even harder. They shot forward, the stars outside blurring into streaks of light. The ships behind them closed in, fast and relentless. Jason glanced at the radar and saw they were gaining on him. He needed to think fast. He wasn't trained for space battles, and this ship was far from a warship. But he had one thing on his side: determination. Jason made a split-second decision. He turned the ship sharply, heading toward an asteroid field he knew was nearby. It was risky, but it was their best chance. "We're going through the asteroid field," Jason shouted to Lyra. Lyra looked at him, wide-eyed. "It's too dangerous. I don't have a choice." Jason replied, "Hold on tight." With that, he steered the ship into the dense field of floating rocks. The ship's speed was a blessing and a curse as they hurtled between the massive asteroids. Jason's hands were steady as he weaved the ship in and out of the rocks, but the strain was starting to show. His heart raced as he fought to keep the ship from colliding with anything. He could feel the pressure, the overwhelming sense of danger, but he couldn't let up. Behind them, the pursuers followed. The other ships weren't as agile, but they were still fast, and they didn't hesitate to fire warning shots, sending blasts that narrowly missed Jason's ship. The sound of the explosions rattled the hull, but Jason didn't slow down. He had to stay ahead. Lyra gripped the seat beside him, her face pale with fear. "Jason, we can't keep this up for long." "They're too close, I know," Jason said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "But we can't give up. We have to find a way out." The asteroid field was thickening, with more and more rocks floating in their path. Jason's eyes darted back and forth, calculating every move, every twist and turn. He knew one wrong move, and they would be crushed. But somehow, he had to make it out. A blast from one of the pursuers hit the ship's outer layer, causing a jolt. Jason's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly recovered. He pushed the engines to their maximum, accelerating through the field. They were getting closer to the edge. Then, suddenly, the ship shuddered. Jason looked up at the control panel and saw a warning light flashing. The engines were overheating. They couldn't keep the speed for much longer. If they didn't break free soon, they'd be setting targets for their pursuers. "I need a few more seconds," Jason said. Gritting his teeth, Lyra looked at him, fear written all over her face. "Hurry." Jason slammed the control lever forward, pushing the ship as fast as it would go. He spotted an opening ahead, a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. It was their chance. With a deep breath, he steered the ship toward the gap, praying they would make it. The ship's engines whined under the pressure, but Jason held on. They were just inches away from smashing into the rocks, but then they shot through the opening, the ship's rear end barely grazing a passing asteroid. Jason exhaled sharply as they emerged on the other side. The pursuing ships had slowed down, unable to follow through the narrow gap. The danger wasn't over, but they had made it, for now. At least. Lyra turned to Jason, her eyes wide with awe. "You did it," Jason smiled, though his heart was still racing. "We did it." As they continued to fly through the darkness of space, Jason knew that this was only the beginning. They had escaped for now, but there were still many dangers ahead. But as long as they had each other, they could face whatever came next. The silence after their narrow escape felt strange. Jason sat in the cockpit, his fingers still gripping the controls, even though the ship was on autopilot. The adrenaline from their chase was starting to fade, leaving behind a tired but satisfied feeling. He turned to look at Lyra, who sat next to him, staring out of the window at the endless stars. "Are you okay?" Jason asked, breaking the silence. Lyra looked at him, her face showing a mix of exhaustion and relief. "I'm fine," she said softly, "but I don't know how long we can keep running." Jason nodded. He knew the danger wasn't over. They had escaped for now, but their pursuers wouldn't give up easily. He had no idea who they were or why they were so determined to capture her, but he knew they'd be back. It was only a matter of time before they tracked them down again. "What now?" Jason asked, leaning back in his seat. "Do you have a plan?" Lyra paused, her eyes darkening as she looked down at her hands. I don't know," she admitted. "I don't even know where to go." Jason felt a pang of sympathy. She had been forced into a life she didn't choose, taken from her home. And now she was trapped in a ship with him, someone she barely knew. What could he offer her? He had no answers. All he knew was that he couldn't just leave her to face this alone. "We'll figure it out," Jason said, trying to sound confident. "I'm not giving up on you." Lyra didn't respond, but Jason could see the faintest trace of gratitude in her eyes. They had formed a bond over the past few weeks, working together on the ship, facing dangers side by side. But now, with the uncertainty of their situation, Jason realized how much was still unknown. What was Lyra's past really like? Who was she running from? And why? And what did the mysterious ship and its strange abilities have to do with all of this? As if answering his unspoken question, Lyra spoke again, her voice quiet. "There's something you don't know about the ship," she said. "Something you need to understand." Jason turned toward her, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated, as though weighing her words. "The ship is not just any ship," she said slowly. It's ancient. It was designed by my people long ago for a specific purpose. It has abilities that most don't understand, even among us. I can feel it. Jason frowned. Abilities? What kind of abilities? Lyra looked at him, her gaze intense. This ship is more than just a vessel. It can bend space and time. It can travel vast distances in the blink of an eye. It's powered by something that was never meant to be understood by ordinary beings. Jason stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Are you saying this ship can travel faster than light? He asked, amazed. Lyra nodded, her eyes distant as she spoke. Yes, but that's not all. The ship was meant to be a weapon, something far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. My people used it in wars long ago, but after the wars ended, they sealed it away. They never wanted anyone to have its power. Jason's mind was racing now. He had always known there was something unusual about the ship, but he hadn't realized the extent of it. No wonder the ship had been so cheap. At the auction, no one had known what it was capable of. And now, here he was, in possession of something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. I had no idea, Jason said, still trying to wrap his head around the revelation. But why did they leave it in the ship? Why did they hide it? With you? Lyra's face grew darker as she looked at him. Because I'm connected to it, she said quietly. I was chosen to be its keeper. I'm the one who can control it, and now, I'm the only one who knows how to unlock its true potential. Jason was silent for a long moment, thinking about everything Lyra had just revealed. A weapon that could bend space? A ship that could travel anywhere, at any time? He was starting to understand why her captors wanted her back so badly. They're not just after you, Jason said, realization dawning on him. They want the ship's power. Lyra nodded, her expression grim. Yes, they'll stop at nothing to get it, and they'll use me to unlock it if they have to. Jason's stomach twisted. He had no idea how to fight something like that. The thought of Lyra being forced into that kind of role made his blood boil. He had to protect her, but how could he do that when they were up against an entire empire that wanted the ship for its power? I won't let them take you, Jason said, his voice firm. Lyra smiled faintly, though there was sadness in her eyes. I don't think it's that simple. Jason took a deep breath, his mind racing. There had to be a way out of this, some way to stop the people who were chasing them. He couldn't let them have the ship or Lyra. We'll figure it out, he repeated, more to himself than to her. But first, we need to know everything about the ship. We need to unlock its power before they do. Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, Jason saw a spark of hope in her gaze. Maybe, just maybe, they could win this fight, but they had a long road ahead of them. And Jason knew they would need all the help they could get. With a determined look, Jason turned back to the controls. It was time to prepare for the next step of their journey. They weren't running anymore. They were going to take the fight to the people who had been chasing them. And he wasn't going to stop until they were safe. The days after discovering the ship's true power were filled with tension. Jason and Lyra spent hours each day exploring the ship's hidden features, learning more about its abilities. The deeper they dug, the more they realized how dangerous the ship truly was. It could bend space and time, move faster than any ship they had ever known. And it was powered by an ancient force that seemed to defy all logic. But as they uncovered more secrets, Jason began to notice something strange. Lyra, who had been so open with him at first, started pulling away. She became distant, often retreating into the quiet corners of the ship, her mind far away. Jason had tried to ask her about it, but she had always given him the same vague answers. It's nothing, she would say, just thinking. Jason didn't believe her. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. The more they explored the ship, the more Lyra seemed to withdraw into herself. It was as if she was carrying some heavy secret, something she wasn't ready to share. One evening, as they were preparing to make another jump to avoid their pursuers, Jason finally confronted her. Lyra, what's going on? He asked, his voice filled with concern. You've been acting different. You're not the same. Lyra looked away, her face a mask of uncertainty. I'm fine, Jason, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Jason stepped closer to her, his heart pounding. I'm not buying it. You're not fine. Something's happening, and I need to know what it is. For a long moment, Lyra remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You don't understand, she said, her voice filled with guilt. I didn't want you to find out this way, but I have to tell you the truth. You deserve to know. Jason's stomach twisted. The tone in her voice sent a wave of fear through him. What was she about to say? I was never meant to be your ally, Lyra continued, her words cutting through the air. I wasn't meant to be free. My people, they sent me here with a plan, Jason. I was sent to you to gain your trust, to lead you into using the ships. Power for them. Jason felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. What? He whispered. Unable to comprehend her words, Lyra's eyes filled with tears, and she turned away, unable to meet his gaze. I never wanted this, she said, her voice breaking. I was chosen. They knew you would find the ship, and they knew you would try to fix it. They knew you would want to use it for something good, and that's why they sent me to make sure you did. Jason stood there, frozen, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Everything he had believed, everything he had fought for, now seemed like a lie. Lyra, the woman he had come to care about, had been sent to manipulate him from the beginning. I was supposed to lead you into unlocking the ship's power, Lyra continued, her voice full of regret. I was supposed to guide you into using it for my people's war. But I never expected to feel the way I do. I never expected to care about you. Jason's heart ached as he struggled to understand what she was saying. So, everything we've been through, it was all part of their plan? You've been lying to me this whole time. Lyra shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. No, Jason, I never lied. I just didn't tell you the whole truth. I was forced into this. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to betray you. Jason took a step back, his mind spinning. He felt betrayed, confused, and hurt. He had trusted her, believed in her, and now he realized that trust had been built on lies. I don't know what to believe anymore, Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought we were in this together. I thought you cared about me. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. I do care about you, she said, her voice desperate, but I was never meant to be free. I was never meant to have a choice. Jason felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. Everything they had done, everything they had fought for, now seemed like a cruel joke. He didn't know what to think. Could he trust her? Could he ever believe in her again? I don't know if I can do this, Jason said, his voice shaking with emotion. I don't know if I can keep going like this. Lyra reached out to him, but Jason took a step back, his heart aching with confusion and betrayal. Jason, please, she pleaded. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't change what I was sent to do. Jason shook his head, his thoughts a tangled mess. I don't know what's real anymore. How can I trust you when you've been lying to me this whole time? Lyra's face crumpled with regret. I wasn't lying, Jason. I just didn't tell you the whole truth. I wanted to, but I was too scared. I didn't want to lose you. For a long moment, Jason stood there, unsure of what to do. He had been betrayed by someone he had come to care for, someone he had thought was his ally. But he couldn't ignore the part of him that still wanted to believe in her, to trust her. She was confused, just like him, caught in a situation neither of them had asked for. I don't know if I can forgive you, Jason said softly, his voice filled with pain. But we need to figure this out. We can't keep running from the truth. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I know. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. Jason sighed, his heart heavy. The road ahead would be harder than he had ever imagined, but somehow they had to find a way through it together or apart. The days after Jason and Lyra's conversation were filled with a heavy silence. The air between them was thick with the weight of what had been revealed. Jason couldn't forget what Lyra had confessed, that she had been sent to him with a mission. She had never truly been free. He struggled with the betrayal. Even as he tried to understand her actions, she had been forced into a life she hadn't chosen, just as he had been thrust into a situation he didn't want. But that didn't make it any easier for Jason. Lyra, for her part, had withdrawn even further. Unable to look him in the eye, she spent her days working on the ship, fixing systems, and navigating them through the stars. But there was a sadness about her now quiet resignation. Jason had wanted to help her, but the more he tried, the more it felt like they were drifting apart. It was late one evening when Jason received a warning on the ship's radar. His heart skipped a beat as he saw several blips approaching at a rapid speed. The ship's communications system crackled to life with a familiar voice. Jason. Lyra's voice was tense. They're here. Jason's pulse quickened. He looked at the radar again. This time, there was no doubt about it. The ships chasing them had finally caught up. What do we do? Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady, even though he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to face him, her expression unreadable. We can't keep running forever, she said quietly. They'll never stop. The longer we avoid them, the stronger they'll become. Jason swallowed hard. Then we face them? Lyra nodded slowly. We have to. There's no other choice now. Jason thought back to everything they had been through. They had fought together, survived together, and in many ways, they had become a team. But now, the choice before him was different. He could continue running with Lyra, protect her, and risk the people chasing them never stopping. Or he could face them head-on, stand up for what they had fought for, and take control of their future, no matter the cost. The thought of fighting against an entire empire, especially when he didn't know all the details of their power, scared him. But he couldn't live in fear forever. He had come so far he couldn't just turn his back on everything they had built. I'm with you, Jason said firmly, meeting Lyra's gaze. No more running. It's time to stop hiding. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and sadness. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I was never your fight. Jason shook his head. You're more than that. You're not just someone they're trying to use. You're more than the mission you were sent with. I'm not letting them take you. Lyra's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. Instead, she turned back to the controls and began preparing the ship for what was coming. Jason knew it wasn't just about her anymore, it was about them both. They had come to rely on each other, to trust each other, and now they would face the consequences of that trust. The enemy ships were closing in fast, and Jason knew the time to make a decision was running out. The ship wasn't built for battle. It wasn't even designed for speed. They had no weapons, no shields, and only their wits to protect them. But they had one advantage. They knew the ship's hidden abilities. Lyra quickly explained what she needed to do. She wasn't sure if it would work, but there was a chance. The ship's power could be used as a weapon, but it would require both of them to activate it together. Jason had to trust her completely, even after everything that had happened. Are you sure this will work? Jason asked, his voice tense. Lyra nodded, but her face was pale. We don't have much of a choice. If we don't do this, they'll destroy us. Jason looked at her for a long moment, his mind racing with the weight of the decision. They had come so far he couldn't let fear control him now. Okay, Jason said, determination in his voice. Let's do it. Lyra took a deep breath and began the process of activating the ship's power. Jason followed her instructions, his hands shaking as he worked the controls. The ship began to hum, its systems coming to life in ways Jason had never seen before. The air around them felt charged, and Jason could sense a strange energy building inside the ship. The enemy ships were now just moments away, their weapons primed and ready. Jason could see their outlines in the distance, closing in fast. Get ready, Lyra whispered, her voice steady, but Jason could hear the tension in it. This is it. With a final push of the button, the ship's systems powered up in a way that was almost too much to comprehend. Jason felt a wave of energy surge through the ship, and then, without warning, the stars around them began to blur. The ship shot forward, faster than he had ever imagined possible. It was like nothing Jason had ever experienced. Everything around them was a blur. The enemy ships left in their wake. For a moment, Jason felt weightless, as though the very fabric of space itself had bent around them. The ship had become something more than just a vessel, it had become a force. And just like that, they were gone. The enemy ships, too slow to keep up, were left behind in the vast expanse of space. Jason breathed a sigh of relief, his body trembling from the intense energy they had just experienced. That was incredible. Lyra looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. It's not over yet, but we've bought ourselves some time. Jason nodded. Feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, they had made their stand, and for the first time, he realized that no matter what came next, they had the power to shape their own destiny.